The night I caught my husband in my silk nightgown, I still had hospital bands in my nightstand drawer. Our daughter was 3 months old. 3 months of leaking through breast pads, of crying in the shower for no clear reason, of Googling "is my baby breathing" at 3 a.m., and then again at 3:07, just to be sure. I'd been out of the house alone maybe 4 times since her birth, and never for more than a couple of hours. That night was supposed to be a small mercy. My sister had insisted. "You're going," she'd said, shoving a clean shirt into my hands while my daughter wailed in the background. "I will watch the baby. You will go have dinner with other adults and remember your own name. This is not a debate." So I went. I put on jeans that almost fit, a flowy top that kind of hid the soft pouch of my stomach, and mascara in a hand that still shook from sleep deprivation. I sat at a restaurant table with 2 friends who'd known me before pregnancy and tried to remember how to be that version of myself. We talked about work and TV shows, and inevitably, babies. "You look great," one of them said. "Seriously, for 3 months postpartum?" I laughed too loudly and said thanks, and didn't know what to do with the words. I did not feel great. I felt like my body had been dismantled and put back together wrong. My hips didn't fit in my clothes. My breasts felt like someone else's entirely. Functional, leaky, heavy. I wanted to believe her, but the compliment slid off a shell that didn't quite fit. I was supposed to stay out until 10. At 8:30, my chest started to ache with that deep pull that meant it was time to feed or pump. I pictured my little girl's mouth searching, the way she rooted blindly against my collarbone, and felt a bolt of panic. "I should head back," I said, fumbling for my bag. "I can feel my body sending notifications." My friends protested, but it was half-hearted. They had early mornings and group chats to return to. I hugged them goodbye, promised I'd text, and drove home with the windows cracked. The spring air felt sharp and cool on my face. As I pulled into the driveway, I felt this small, selfish flare of hope. Maybe she'd be asleep already. Maybe the house would be quiet, and I could tiptoe in and just breathe. Maybe my husband, Eric, would be on the couch, and we could watch half an episode of something before I inevitably fell asleep sitting up. The living room lights were off when I stepped inside, but I could hear music from down the hall. Soft, instrumental, something with piano and a slow, steady rhythm. The baby monitor on the coffee table glowed faintly. I toed off my shoes and listened. The music was coming from the nursery. For a split second I panicked. Was it some toy stuck on repeat? Had he left something on too loud near the baby's crib? I hurried down the hall, heart already thudding that little parental staccato. The nursery door was ajar. I pushed it open with my fingertips. I don't know what I expected, certainly not what I saw. Eric was standing in the middle of the room, back to me, bathed in the pale glow of the nightlight shaped like a moon. My silk nightgown, the ivory one I'd worn the last weeks of pregnancy, because it was the only thing that felt remotely pretty, hung from his shoulders, clinging to his frame in unfamiliar ways. The hem brushed his knees. His calves, dusted with dark hair, were encased in sheer nude pantyhose that caught the dim light when he moved. And he was moving, slowly, almost dreamily, swaying from side to side in time with the music, bare feet whispering against the rug. His arms were wrapped around one of the baby's stuffed animals, a floppy-eared bunny he held against his chest like a slow dancing partner. Our daughter slept peacefully in the crib behind him, tiny chest rising and falling. For a moment, everything in me went silent. My brain took a snapshot. The nightgown, the pantyhose, his profile soft and unguarded as he turned a little, eyes closed. It was such an intimate pose, I felt like I was walking in on a stranger. Then the silence shattered. What the hell? My first emotion wasn't curiosity. It wasn't even confusion. It was fury. The kind of hot, sudden anger that starts in your chest and leaps straight to your face. I thought about the way my body had been carved open metaphorically, stretched, torn, stitched. The way I'd flinched at my reflection more than once, tugging the same silk nightgown down over swollen breasts and soft belly, telling myself I'd be me again eventually. The way I'd stood in this very room at 2 a.m., milk damp on my shirt, knees shaking, humming nonsense just to keep from crying as the baby screamed. And here he was, in my clothes, in the nursery, dancing. Playing dress-up while I was out trying to remember I existed. The floor creaked under my foot. Eric froze. His eyes snapped open. He spun around so fast the hem of the nightgown flared. When he saw me in the doorway, colour drained from his face. "Liv," he said, my name sharp with shock. His voice cracked. You're home early." I stared at him. At the silk clinging to his shoulders, the way the strap had fallen slightly, revealing a pale patch of skin. At the pantyhose smoothed over his thighs, too long for me, stretched snug and without a wrinkle. "What are you doing?" I asked. It came out flat. Dangerous. He glanced down at himself as if just realizing what he was wearing, then back at me. His hands fluttered uselessly, bunny dangling from one wrist. I can explain," he stammered. "I was just what?" My voice rose. I saw our daughter shift in the crib and forced it back down, teeth clenched. "Borrowing my clothes? In the nursery?" His shoulders hunched like he'd been struck. "Please, can we talk about this outside? I don't want to wake her." "Oh, now you're worried about waking her," I said. "That's new." His face crumpled. "Liv, that's not fair." I laughed. It sounded brittle in my ears. "You know what's not fair?" I stepped into the room, every line of my body buzzing. Me bleeding for 6 weeks while my organs reorganized themselves and my boobs turned into vending machines. And you? What? Playing pretend in my nightgown to soothing piano music? "That's not what this is," he said quickly, eyes wide. I'm not mocking you, I swear." "Then what is it?" I hissed, reaching out to flick the nightgown hem. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my husband likes wearing my clothes more than I do." Our daughter let out a soft noise in her sleep and rolled her head. I swallowed hard and backed toward the hallway, the need to get out of that room suddenly overwhelming. "Take it off," I said, voice trembling now. "Take it off and meet me in the kitchen." I didn't wait for his answer. In the kitchen, I paced. The overhead light was too bright. My reflection in the dark window above the sink was red-faced, eyes shiny. Milk had leaked through my bra and onto my shirt in 2 damp crescents. I could feel the clammy fabric against my skin. I ripped open a paper towel, pressed it against my chest, and immediately hated that this was my life now. Always leaking, always tired, always on the verge of tears. And somehow, in the middle of all that, my husband had found the time and privacy to slip into my prettiest nightgown and glide around the nursery like some ghost of the woman I used to be. He padded in a minute later, barefoot, in his boxers and t-shirt. The silk and nylon were gone. His hair was mussed. His expression was naked in a way I wasn't used to seeing. No easy smile, no diffuse calm. Just fear, and something like grief. "Liv, why my nightgown?" I cut in. "Why the nursery?" He flinched. "Can I at least get pants?" "No," I said. "You can get pants after you explain why you were dressed like that in the room where our daughter sleeps." He closed his eyes for a second, like he was bracing against a wave. When he opened them, they were wet. "I'm sorry you saw," he said. "I didn't mean for you to find out like that." A hysterical sound bubbled up in my throat. "Oh, I'm sorry I ruined your private show." Liv. His voice sharpened. Please stop for a second and listen. I clamped my jaw shut. Anger hummed under my skin, but beneath it was a smaller, more frightened feeling I didn't want to look at too closely. He took a breath, shoulders rising and falling. I've done this for a long time, he said slowly. Not always in your clothes. Before you, it was whatever I could sneak. My mum's robe, a thrift store nightgown when I moved out. Always alone, always behind locked doors. Why? I demanded. Why would you do that? He looked at his hands, flexed them once, then met my eyes. Because it makes me feel softer, he said. Like I'm allowed to relax. Like I can switch off the part of me that has to be the man all the time. I opened my mouth to fire back something about how I didn't exactly feel soft these days. How every inch of me ached. But the words stuck. The way he said, the man, lodged somewhere in my chest. He went on, voice low. Since the baby came, I've been trying so hard to be what I thought you needed, he said. The steady one, the rock, the person who gets up and goes back to work and jokes about diapers and doesn't freak out so you can freak out if you need to. I love her. I love you. But I also feel like I lost something overnight, like I went from being your partner to support staff. That's not true, I said automatically, though a guilty part of me knew I had more than once snapped at him like he were a coworker who needed clearer instructions. He shrugged one shoulder, eyes shining. Maybe it's not fair, he said, but that's how it feels sometimes. Like there's no room for me to be scared too, or confused, or soft. You get to cry. You get to say you don't recognize your body. When I say I'm tired, I feel like a jerk, because at least no one cut into my abdomen or stitched me up, so I just keep it in. He swallowed hard, putting on something silky, feeling it on my skin. It's stupid, but it lets me access something I can't reach in jeans and a hoodie. It's like this tiny permission slip to drop my shoulders, to feel gentle. His words painted a picture very different from the one I'd walked in on. Less mockery, more longing. And the pantyhose? I asked, still clinging to whatever skepticism I had left. He huffed out a broken laugh. They're grounding, like a hug for my legs. His ears went pink. God, that sounds ridiculous out loud. I stared at him. At this man who had sat beside my hospital bed and cried quietly when he thought I was asleep, who had changed diapers and washed bottles and cooked dinners even when I snapped at him that he'd chopped the vegetables wrong, who now stood in our kitchen confessing that silk and nylon were his coping mechanism. My anger didn't vanish, but it shifted, making room for something else. A sharp stab of shame at how easy it had been to assume the worst. Why the nursery? I asked again, softer this time. He glanced down the hall. Because that's where I feel the most out of my depth, he admitted. You walk in there and you just know what to do, how to hold her, what each cry means. I feel like a guest in my own kid's life sometimes. So I put on the nightgown when you left, turned on some music and held her bunny. He swallowed. I was practicing, trying to feel comfortable in that room, trying to imagine what it'd be like to bring some of that softness in with me. I thought maybe if I could feel it, I could give it to her too. Something in my chest cracked open. I remembered the way he'd swayed, the bunny pressed to his chest, the careful way he'd moved so as not to disturb the sleeping baby. I'd seen it through a lens of humiliation and resentment. But now, replaying it with his words in mind, it looked different. Hurt? Yes. But also tender. I thought you were making fun of me, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Of how I look now, of how I've changed. Like you put on my nightgown because the real me isn't enough. He recoiled like I'd slapped him. Liv, no, he said fiercely. God, no, I would never. You... He broke off, eyes glistening. I know you don't feel like yourself right now, but I look at you and I see the strongest person I've ever known. You made a human. You're feeding her with your body. You're incredible. Half the time I'm scared to touch you because I'm afraid you'll think I'm expecting you to be who you were before, when you're clearly in a whole new chapter. I blinked rapidly as tears blurred my vision. My throat felt thick. So instead of asking me how I felt, I said, You put on my clothes and danced with a stuffed rabbit. He winced. Yeah, he said. When you put it like that, it sounds pretty pathetic. I let out a wet laugh despite myself. We stood there, two exhausted people in a too-bright kitchen, ringed by baby bottles drying on a rack and burp cloths draped over chairbacks. My shirt was stained with milk. His t-shirt was wrinkled, a faint line on his chest where the bra strap had been moments before. I'm still mad, I said finally. Not about you wearing things. I mean, I don't fully understand it, but I'm not disgusted. I'm mad you didn't tell me, that you've been carrying all of this, and instead of saying, hey, I feel useless and I have this weird coping mechanism, you sneak around in my closet when I finally get an hour to myself. He nodded, tears spilling over now. That's fair, he whispered. You have every right to be mad. We were quiet for a moment. The music in the nursery had stopped. The house felt oddly naked without it. What do you want to do? He asked. There was no self-pity in it, just genuine uncertainty. About all of this. The old me, the pre-baby me, might have wanted to get in the car and drive until my head cleared. The current me was tethered by a baby who would need to eat soon, and a body that protested at the thought of sitting in any position that wasn't carefully negotiated. I don't know yet, I said honestly, but I know I don't want to pretend I didn't see. And I don't want you to stuff this back in a box and go on like everything's normal, because it's not, for either of us. He nodded, shoulders slumping in something like relief. Maybe we start with some rules, I said, surprising myself with how practical I sounded. 1. If you want to wear things, you ask before you take my clothes. Pregnancy ruined enough of my wardrobe. I refused to share the survivors without a conversation. A ghost of a smile tugged at his mouth. Fair. 2, I went on. No more sneaking around while I'm out like you're having an affair with my closet. If you need softness, we talk about it. We figure out how to make space for it in a way that doesn't make me feel like you've replaced me with a silk-covered version of yourself. His smile faded into something more earnest. Okay, he said. I can do that. I want to do that. And 3, I said, taking a breath. We find someone to talk to. A therapist. Preferably one who knows things about gender and postpartum and all that. Because clearly we're both drowning in expectations we don't know how to meet. He nodded so vigorously his hair flopped. Yes, he said instantly. Yes, please. We stood there a second longer, and then something in me softened. I stepped forward and rested my forehead against his chest. He hesitated, then wrapped his arms around me. I felt the faint imprint of the bra strap under his t-shirt where the elastic had been. It was such a small, weird detail, but somehow it anchored me. I missed you tonight, he murmured into my hair. I kept thinking about you out there, trying to be normal, and me here, trying to figure out how to be whatever this is. I missed me too, I said, a little broken laugh escaping. Maybe we're both trying to find ourselves in weird places. His arms tightened. Later, after we'd checked on the baby and changed into clean clothes, mine another stretched-out top, his mercifully just sweatpants, We sat on the couch with the monitor between us. We didn't turn on the TV. We just talked. About how my body felt foreign to me. About how he'd felt like his body only ever had one script. Strong, capable, in control. And how the cracks in that script had terrified him. We didn't solve everything, of course. You don't untangle decades of gender expectations and 3 months of sleep deprivation in one night. But something fundamental shifted. We stopped performing for each other. Stopped pretending to be sturdy when we were both frayed at the edges. A week later, a package arrived on the doorstep addressed to him. He opened it sheepishly at the kitchen table while I bounced the baby on my hip. "It's mine," he said, lifting out a navy blue satin nightshirt in his actual size, with matching soft pants. "So I don't have to raid your closet." I ran my fingers over the fabric. It was smooth and cool, not unlike my old nightgown, but undeniably his. "It's nice," I said. "You'll look good in it." He looked up, surprise and gratitude mingling in his eyes. "You're okay with—" "I'm okay with you having something that makes you feel calm," I said. "As long as we keep talking, and as long as my silk nightgown remains retired until I decide otherwise." He laughed. The baby squealed in response, kicking her little legs. That night, after we'd fed her and laid her down, he came into the living room in the navy nightshirt, looking shy but less terrified than he had in my ivory one. I wore leggings and a nursing tank, my hair piled in a messy bun. "You look soft," I said, and meant it as a compliment. "You look like a superhero," he said. "A very tired superhero who could definitely beat me up." I snorted. "Don't tempt me." We ended up slow dancing in the hallway between the nursery and our room, the baby monitor balanced on the console table. No silk draped over me, no pantyhose smoothed over his legs. Just the two of us swaying carefully, my cheek against his shoulder, his hand warm on my back. "Do you still feel like support staff?" I asked quietly. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But less. I feel more like a partner in crime again. Especially now that I know you don't think I'm a freak." "I never thought you were a freak," I said. "I thought you were an idiot. There's a difference." He chuckled, breath warm against my hair. "If it helps," he said, "I think you in that nightgown was always my favorite thing. Not because it was silk, but because it was you. The fabric was a bonus." "Nice save," I murmured. Our daughter stirred on the monitor, then settled. The music app on my phone, still open from that first night, suggested another soft piano playlist. "Maybe next time you want to dance in the nursery," I said, "you let me come with. I can hum backup, no dress code required." He pulled back enough to look at me, eyes bright. "Deal," he said. "We're still figuring it out." Therapy turned out to be less terrifying than either of us feared. I'm learning that my femininity isn't tied to a single nightgown or the number on a scale. He's learning that his masculinity doesn't evaporate if he's gentle or if he wraps himself in something silky to breathe a little easier. Some nights, when the baby finally sleeps and the dishes are done and the house is quiet in that rare, fragile way, we stand in the dim nursery together. He wears his navy nightshirt. I wear whatever clean thing I can find. He sways with our daughter in his arms, and I rest my hand on their backs. Softness, I've realized, isn't a costume you put on. It's what's underneath, finally allowed to show, and if that sometimes involves satin or pantyhose in a drawer, well, there are stranger things in a marriage than two people learning, at the same time, that they're allowed to be gentle.